Hello, everyone. This is your AP Sensei, Ben Dunn, founder of Antarctic Press, a comic book company established in 1985, creator of such comics as Ninja High School, Warrior Nun, Mighty Tiny, Tomorrow Girl, and a host of other comic books. So, things are kind of in a dour state these days. The economy as it is, things going as they are. We may be on the brink of World War III. I mean, that's what people are saying. So, what kind of positivity can there be given the circumstances that we live in today? Well, there's an old saying that says, control the things that you can control and don't worry about the things you can't. There are things that are just simply beyond our control that we somehow are just observers. Things that we just can't really do much about. Now, of course, we have an election coming up. It seems like there's a lot of goings on between both sides. I like to think of myself as more of an independent. I try to see if either side can convince me, to give them my vote. I usually don't like to play politics, especially, given that I do comics for a living and I rely on readers of all persuasions, all political beliefs, all religious beliefs, all genders. I want you all to read my comics. That's the attitude I like to take. I don't want to muddy the waters by trying to espouse some sort of religious or political belief that may adhere to interfere in my ability to entertain my audience. Sometimes it's better just to shut your face and not say anything. Let people guess. It's like there some things are just kind of obvious. You can look at the person's work and you can see where their leanings are. Me, I've never liked that. I've always been one of let's just try to entertain people and have a good time. There's enough going on in the real world that we don't have to have more of it in our entertainment, especially in comics. Comics were meant to be an escapist medium. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use comics to present an idea that may be controversial or present an idea that is of a certain political persuasion. I mean, no, I'm not saying that. It's one of the best comics in the world is Miles by Art Spiegelman, and that's definitely trots on a very controversial nature, but and it's considered a masterpiece. But I know that I could never create something like that because it's just not in me to do that. I don't have the experience, I don't have the drive to create comics that are trying to change the world. I'm only trying to create comics that will come out on a regular basis, that people will enjoy, for for that particular day, and pick it up, spend their $5 on a comic, and take it home, read it, and say, "Damn, that was a damn good comic. I really enjoyed it. I'm hoping to read the next issue," and that's really what my goal is to, as a comic book creator, I've never had the aspiration of creating a comic book that was going to change the world. My my feeling is that I want to be doing this as a regular thing, and I want to keep on creating comics on a regular basis because that's just in my nature. I just want to do it. I want to keep doing it. You know, I, as long as I got stories to tell, I've gone on, and I just want to. And as a publisher, we got to keep up with the whole idea behind publishing comics is that you publish comics. You get them out on a regular basis. as a product that people will enjoy. It's just like anything else. Any type of product needs to come out on a regular basis in order to maintain the constant ability to remain in business. That's really what it comes down to. A lot of comic book publishers don't realize that. Well, I'm not saying, maybe I'm just being a little too broad in that statement, but a lot of first-time publishers fail because they cannot put out product on a timely basis. It's all about being able to maintain the product cash flow. I've mentioned this before in some of my earlier things, is that's really the most important thing. Now, that kind of brings me to the three things that really are instrumental in the survivability of the comic book industry. Number one is the content. If you don't have good content, you're not going to convince enough people to want to go to a comic book store or go online and read your comic. The content has to be entertaining enough to attract enough readers, enough paid customers to keep you employed, so that it's worth doing the comic that you're doing. So if the comic industry is not putting out good content, then people are just going to move on to something else. They're going to look at it and say, it's going to be I've got other options. There's a lot of competition for entertainment out there, and it's up to us as an industry to maintain a flow of content that will keep people interested in coming back. It's all about the content. In comics, it's the art that attracts people, but it's a story that keeps them coming back. And that's really what we need to be focusing on as an industry. Now, have we been diligent in that aspect? Well, it depends on who you ask. The results speak for itself. The problem is that the industry is definitely on a downturn. It definitely is not as robust and as healthy as it should be. And it all comes down to the content. People want good content, and if they can't get good content, then they're going to move on to something else. So what's the second part? The second part is distribution. We have abandoned a lot of the traditional forms of distribution, and that is coming to bite us in the butt. Now, some people say, "Oh, Ben, it's all about the digital world. The digital world is what's going to save comics." And I say, well, okay, if you believe that, then that's fine. But how are you going to monetize that? Oh, man, well, look at Shonen Jump. They have this $3 subscription. You can read all the book comics you can read for $3. And that's definitely a business model if you have the content that Shonen Jump has. You must realize that Shonen Jump is a comic book manga company that's been in business for 50, 60 years, a long time. So they have a lot of content, and the thing about it is that they're constantly coming out with content on a regular basis. They're just producing content out the yin yang at the wazoo. So there's a lot of choices for people to, and it's easy to navigate the thing. Now, are they making money? I don't know. The thing about it is that I have no idea how much they're making, whether they're making a profit or it's a money loser. Sometimes some businesses do what's called loss leader. Now, loss leader is when you're going to lose money on something, in return you're going to gain in the long run. Now, it could be very well that Shonen, through their idea of offering a huge catalog of manga for a very low price, is basically to get you hooked on it so that you will eventually buy the physical editions, where that's where the big money is. A lot of people are saying that, digital is the way to go. Digital is the way to go. Well, fine. If you think you can make a good living going digital, more power to you. I have nothing against that. I have no problem with it. But why can't you do both? You know, why rely on simply just one way of getting your content out there and making money on it? Why must you abandon both, one in exchange for another? You know, I've never understood that. If you can make money in both venues, then why wouldn't you? Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are saying it's the digital world out there, and that's fine. Yeah, it's a digital world. But what happens, when it's no longer viable? There's been a lot of crashes and bubbles in the past where people thought this was the future, and it turned out to be not so. The dot-com bubble was a good example of that. When comics itself have gone through many highs and lows throughout this industry, throughout this life, and this could be simply another low. All it takes really is somebody clever enough to come up with a distribution model that works. And we haven't seen it yet because comics are not doing so well, not getting out there. But I am of the firm belief that if you were to make people aware that comics were available and in ways that they can actually get, then I think comics would become healthy again. I mean, Ben, you're being naive. You think that you can go ahead and put them back on spinner racks? Well, you know what? It worked in the past. And people still want to buy things. They still want to be able to hold things, to own things. The thing about digital is that if that's all you want to do is read it, then that's fine. But getting them to pay for it, that might be a little bit more difficult issue. When you're buying a comic off a rack, you are making a conscious choice to pay money to own something physical and that you will have forever in your possession. On the digital front, you don't own it. You never will. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've never bought anything digital online. Every time I buy something, I bought one time. Well, I can't get back. One time I did buy a PDF online, and I had to read it on their website. I could access it, but I couldn't read it. And then, I'd forgotten about it for months, and I said, hey, I want to read that comic again. And when I tried to access it again, I couldn't access it anymore. So I paid money for a digital comic that I no longer could read, at my phone. But if I buy a comic off the rack and I have it in my comic book box and I want to read it again, flip, pull out the comic and I can read it. I mean, maybe that's old fashioned, but I tell you what, until people get to the point where they no longer want to own physical things, then there's always going to be something that they'll want to have. I mean, why do you think people are paying millions of dollars for old comics? That just boggles the mind. It does. Why would anyone want to pay that kind of money? Because they just want to own it something physical. Yeah, and I don't think that'll ever change unless people, the very idea of people themselves change, where they no longer feel, unless we become like, energy is a pure being, then we'll always want to be tactile. So, yes, distribution is a key factor. Right now, our distribution model is antiquated and old and needs to be revived. And we need to have some sort of out-of-the-box thinking in order to get comic book in the hands of people that want them. I mean, maybe there's a way we can have a direct to your door subscription service, like, remember those old Columbia House record things? Buy 100 comics for 1 penny, and then see and see if we can't get them hooked on it and get them to buy more comics later on. I'm just saying. Maybe that didn't work. I don't know. So the last thing is price. Price is very important to people nowadays, especially with the way things are. People have to have a roof over their heads, and people have to eat. Those are the two priorities. I mean, the hierarchy of needs. You have to fulfill your physical needs before you can fulfill your mental, needs. So once your physical needs are been satisfied, then you have extra income left over, then you can decide whether or not you want to uh, do something beyond meeting your physical needs. I'm not saying that comics are, you know, are at a good price point. I mean, but I think in relation to other things, comics is a pretty good deal. You know, $5 is the new $1, to be honest. I mean, if you think about it, the thing about it is that the price of comics is determined by the price of printing, the price of labor. When the price of labor goes up and the price of printing goes up and the price of shipping goes up, then the price of comics have to go up in order to maintain a sound business model. You know, the thing about it is that we do not have a flexible, variable price model. We have a suggested SRP on each and every comic book that we have to, for some reason, put on every comic book. You know, when you buy something, and the price can vary from one location to another. You know, a Big Mac or a box of cereal can cost X dollars in one place, and the very same product can be another price in another place. The comics are not that flexible. You know, we have to, for some reason, put on a retail price on it if we want to sell it in a physical location. You know, and that's just the way it's always been. You know, and people can choose to decide to pay that price or not. Now, if we went to a flexible pricing where we didn't put any price on it, we just did an SRP to the retailer, say, hey, look, we think this comic can be sold for $5. So some places, well, I'm going to sell it for $3.99 because I can get away with it there. You know, I'm going to sell it for $10 because I can get away with it there. You know, it just depends on the location. Comics just don't have that flexibility, I'm afraid. You know, now, is there a solution to that? I don't know. I'm not sure. You know, has comics tried to do that with putting no price on a comic and letting the retailer decide how much a comic should go for? I can't, in my memory, think of that situation, but it may have been done. I just don't know whether it was successful or not. You know, obviously, it didn't work because we're still in the phase of putting the suggested retail price on our comic books. But in relation to a lot of things, comic books are still a pretty good deal. I mean, it's just about whether or not you feel the price of the book is worth the content you're buying. You know, and that's really what it comes down to. You know, when Iron Press, we'd like to give, you know, at least we think we give us some pretty good value. Most of our comics are putting 32, 40 pages of content, not padded out with a lot of ads, you know, not padded out. And I mean, we try to give you the most bang for your buck. And, but it's hard to differentiate based on just simply looking at a cover. You know, we try to give people to understand that, you know, we're giving you 32 pages of real content, you know, 32 to 40 pages of content for the same price that Marvel and DC are offering, which is simply 20 to 22 pages, you know, of content. And we are trying to give our readers more value for the money, for the content that we are offering. You know, is that the case in everything? No, of course not. You know, but we're trying. You know, we're trying to make our comics worth it. So, is there a solution? Well, unless labor and printing and shipping go down, it's highly unlikely that prices of comics are going to go down. If nothing else, just like everything else, it's going to go up. You know, what's the threshold? Hard to say. You know, when people don't have disposable income like they should have, then it becomes down to whether or not I can buy this comic or I'll eat. And most people will probably choose I'm going to eat. You know, do I pay my rent or do I buy this comic? And most people are going to say I'm going to pay my rent. You know, and it just somehow I'm always fascinated by people who are spending millions of dollars on a comic book when they could have taken that same $1 million and put it into the hands of new creators creating new content. You know, instead of buying a musty old comic, you know, for so that'll just sit in some comic box or a vault or on somebody's wall. You know, you could actually change people's lives by spending that same kind of money. You know, if you the same $1 million that bought that Action Comics #1, how many creators he could have backed with that money? You know, I'm not saying that's what they should do, but I'm just saying it probably would have created a more healthy comic book industry if the monies were spent in that fashion. But that's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being foolish. Maybe I'm being naive. Maybe you disagree with what I'm saying. You know, more than welcome to do so. It's a free country for now. So, anyway, that's all I have to say. Until next time, this has been Dunn signing off.